Hey everybody, it's Gil here with the Sailing Vessel Dream Chaser, and last week we passed a really cool milestone. We actually crossed the 3,000 subscriber list, so thank you to everybody who subscribes, shares the channel with their friends, gives it a thumbs up, and comments on it. It's kind of cool building a little community like we have, and people ask questions about doing boat repair and living on a boat and raising kids on a boat, and it's been a really neat experience for us to, one, share it with others, and two, just for the camaraderie that happens, and the guidance and questions and advice and conversation that happens with all of y'all. So thank you very, very much. So in last week's episode, we went over to the Atlantic Highlands Marina and checked out a marina along the Atlantic coast. We went and visited Sandy Hook, the beach where I used to play as a kid when I was growing up. I also spent a little bit of time and talked about arterial fibrillation, or AFib. It's something I have, and I ran into it. It was a very odd situation. I normally don't talk about that at all, but the fact that my dad was in the hospital and had some complications because of his AFib, and then I'm here taking care of him and ended up going into it. So I thought it was interesting, and I shared a little bit about what that is and maybe a couple little graphic things that show how the heart operates and what the cause of this issue is. In this week's episode, I'd love to take you on a little bit of a virtual trip with me down to Atlantic City, if you will. Consider it the East Coast, lower budget Vegas, if you will. I'm not a big gambler. As a matter of fact, I don't know that I've ever actually been to Atlantic City until this week. I prefer to waste my money instead of in a slot machine or a gambling table. I'll throw it into some boat parts and things like that. But Atlantic City has kind of an interesting history. There's some really off the beaten path roadside attractions, and I'll take you to a really oddball one that dates all the way back to the 1800s. It was pretty interesting. I'll also go on out to Atlantic City's famous Steel Pier, and we'll take a look from high above the water around what that looks like, and kind of go through a little bit of detail on just the Atlantic coast and the history of Atlantic City's Steel Pier. What's interesting is there was a really, really unique show they used to have there, and I've got some vintage footage of that, and I'll talk a little bit about that in this week's video. Hope you guys enjoy it. So I decided to take a drive on down to Atlantic City. All the time I lived here and visited back as an adult, I don't think I've ever been back to Atlantic City. So anyway, I thought I'd go check it out and see what's there. There's a couple of interesting sites to see, and I might go check some of them out. We'll see. I'm going to put the phone down and be safe here. So I started driving down toward Atlantic City. I'm getting ready to head to this thing called Lucy the Elephant, which I'll see what it is in a few minutes. But this caught my attention. I looked over here and I saw all these floating houses. It kind of reminds me of like what you would see in Seattle or Portland, like the whole Sleepless in Seattle housing community. I don't know if these were maybe damaged during a hurricane many years ago or something, but there's literally a dozen of them just sitting right here. It's kind of wild. Wow, this is really wild. I don't know, I guess this was like a floating community in here that was just destroyed from a storm. These houses are all either partially sunk, the water seems like it's all gone, but you can see that they were definitely underwater at some point. This one right here in front of us, I don't know if you can see that, but there's water up 3 feet up the sides of it. And it's like all the water was drained out of this, maybe for the repair or the recovery. Got one over here. A couple of them sort of sitting sideways. Yeah, so pretty wild, and forgive me, I'm using my iPhone, so I didn't really plan on stopping and recording this, so forgive the quality here, but man, that was weird looking. All right, one of our country's national historic landmarks and America's oldest roadside attraction. This here is Lucy the Elephant, just outside of Atlantic City, New Jersey. Let's see if I can figure out what the hell this thing's from or for. I don't know if you can see that. It said this thing's 6 stories tall, but it doesn't really look like it to me, but even the eyes are windows. So the history here is pretty cool. This was originally built by a land developer in 1881. He was developing land along the Jersey shore and decided to build this thing as a bit of a promotional item. He went ahead and patented and trademarked the design so that nobody could copy it, and it remained a bit of a South Jersey historical site for quite some time. Many, many years later, she fell under some disarray just from neglect, and in the 1960s, a small committee got together and essentially restored her and moved her onto some city land. Spent almost $1 million restoring it back to its original condition. But supposedly it's a 6-story tall, gigantic elephant structure, and I'm going to go on a tour of it. What the hell? Now that is one big wide ass. I'm not sure if you can see this, but even those eyes are essentially round windows. There's some people up on the observation deck, and then even right on the sides of it, where the blanket sort of thing is on top, are more additional windows. Pretty unique structure for sure. To give you an idea of its size, one of the back legs is where you enter in. There's a door and a staircase back there.
Alright, you guys, just gonna run up.
Pretty cool. Old wooden structure for sure. Coming up a back leg. Oh, freaking awesome. What's up in the elephant? These panes of glass right here look out the backside of the elephant, so that's not a pane of glass, it's a pane in the, well, you know. So this is the guy, James Lafferty. He's the one that essentially built this. He created a patent and a trademark on it. It's kind of interesting. And then sold a couple of those and had 3 sister elephants built. They've since fallen apart, and this is the only one standing. So back in the 60s, this is essentially what it looked like. It had fallen into some horrible disarray, and they were getting ready to tear it down, and they were going to put up a set of condominiums. I believe I show them in this video as well, because you can see them. It's about 2 blocks from where it sits today. And ultimately, this committee got together. They raised some funds to essentially move it to some city land. It took 7 hours to move it to 2 blocks, you can see there. So they said it was a residence for 1 year. Said it didn't make a very good residence, but I don't know if you can see that. There's a little sink over there. You can't quite see it. I can get my head tucked in there, and there's also the original bathtub. Pretty cool. So that bathroom is right behind one of these little closet doors there. It's kind of interesting. They did say they rent this place out for, weddings and ceremonies and stuff, and you could see that with the sort of raised area in the front. It makes sense. So now it's time to go ahead and go into one of these little side doors and up onto the roof. These staircases are just sort of narrow, very steep wooden staircases, but it's kind of cool. And as we got up top, you can see our tour guide there and the other family that was on the tour with me, but essentially 6 stories up on the top of Lucy the elephant. Yeah, pretty good view from up here. I'm looking right out the front over the top of the elephant's head toward the shore. The original one aimed a little bit more perpendicular to the shoreline, they said, and used to be right there where those condos were. So they only moved it 2 blocks. It took over 7 hours to do that. It seems like I only do any kind of sightseeing when it's cloudy and gloomy outside. But, oh well, it's a cool little thing, and I like going to see things that are off the beaten path. And this is off the beaten path. Oh, steep spiral staircase going down. Pretty wild filming while you look down like that. Make sure I'm holding on. I don't want to go tumbling down these damn things. And then back into the elephant. Pretty wild. So one of the original closet doors. And you see the rib right there. I was talking to the guy upstairs and saying this thing looks a lot like it's built a lot like a wooden boat. And he said that's exactly what it was. It was actually originally constructed and rebuilt by shipwrights. Pretty cool to see the big ribs essentially, and then planks along the side of them. The beauty of this is they probably didn't have to use planks and bend them the whole way. They could make odd angles and then cover it with the skin on the outside, essentially the zinc or whatever it is. And they say you can't very well come over here and not look out Lucy's eyes, so we'll do exactly that. And you can see it's the shore right over there, so pretty cool. I love these little roadside attractions that are weird like this. It's the place that's not everybody's going to go. Everybody's going to go to the Steel Pier in Atlantic City, and I'll probably go down there too. But I always want to find one little oddity to go see when I come visit an area like this. I'm down in Atlantic City. I don't appear to be in the very nicest of areas, but I found parking not too far behind this casino, and I'm just walking up by the Steel Pier, which I think is an old sort of pier that goes out over the water, and it has rides and whatnot on it. It's still cold, so it'll probably be closed. Yeah, this is Steel Pier. I'm gonna walk on out in it and check it out. Big old Ferris wheel. Probably a pretty good view from up there. Well, this kind of looks a little bit like a lot of the other, Pleasure Pier down in Galveston, or the Kemah Boardwalk, pier or something like that. Pretty similar. What was interesting is I was kind of thinking, wow, I wonder if this is owned by Landry's, the same company that owns those ones in Texas. They also own the Golden Nugget Casino, and there is a Golden Nugget down here in Atlantic City. I later went and asked somebody that worked there, and it turns out they don't. But take a look at this first wheel. You can see just how tall it is. And we got the flying rats. That's what I call seagulls. They make a lot of noise. They poop all over everything. And then they split. They make a mess of everything. But just walking down toward the end to check it out, and then I noticed this little tiny roller coaster on the right here. It was kind of cool. It's like a little kiddie roller coaster, and it was sort of rumbling by as I walked through here. So fun times just checking it all out. As I walked down to the end of the pier, they had these helicopter rides out there. You can take this helicopter and ride along the shoreline and around Steel Pier. I might have considered it if it wasn't just so cloudy. I figured I didn't want to pay all that money and then not be able to see the sights. And you can kind of see it. Here's the Atlantic Ocean on the end of the pier, and you can see what I mean about just how sort of cloudy it is. Can't even see the upper half of that building. But the seas are a pretty good size. I don't know, maybe 4 to 5 feet or so. Definitely bigger than what we see in the Gulf of Mexico. Checking out the shoreline and stuff. Pretty abandoned just given the time of year that it is, though. They had one of these big swing rides that sat right on the edge of the water, so as you swung out there, you kind of went out and around it. I just thought it was pretty cool looking. I decided to do a little bit of it in sort of slow motion. I wish it was a little clearer of a day, and I might have had it a little bit better in focus, but it still looks pretty cool seeing the couple of riders there just kind of coming around, in slow motion. Shockingly, that's just on an iPhone. That actually works pretty darn good. But I liked it, and let's, what the heck. We'll go ahead and speed it back up here in just a second. I'm just sitting here waiting on my turn. As soon as they board, I'll head over that way and grab myself a car. Kind of nice. It surprisingly is, I won't say warm, but it's warmer. It was chilly earlier, but feels pretty good right now. So I'm loaded in, just waiting on the doors to close and for us to make a rotation or two. Well, the doors just closed and away we go. Kind of what it looks like going out the side. And if we were to look out here, it's kind of nice. These cars are fully enclosed, so it's warm. There's actually heat and air in it if you needed it. And it looks like we are just about at the apex right now. So that car in front of me is now going down below me. It's kind of an interesting feeling when you start going this way. And we'll get the full view straight out the back here. Pretty wild. There we go. And we get a clear view now of the of Atlantic City. And I'll just rotate right around here. See that helicopter tour going by right there. Kind of see the pier right down there. And got a pretty good view right here as we go straight out. Crazy Mouse, roller coaster, and you'll see a helicopter going by again. He lands right at the end of the pier. Out there on that pier, it looks like a go-kart track. That'd probably be pretty fun in the summertime, huh? This Steel Pier was actually named after the company that built it. It was opened in June of 1898, built by the Steel Pier Company. It was concrete under the water surface and steel beams and structures that held up the entire pier. I'm sure it has since been rebuilt many, many times, but it's kind of an interesting history. And when you think back to just how old it is, right, much like Coney Island or one of those historic piers, this is sort of that Atlantic northeast coast thing, right, New York, New Jersey, where there is a pier out over the water that has a small set of amusements and rides and, you know, a midway or games, if you will, on it. So it's pretty cool. So from the 1920s to the 1970s, there used to be an attraction out here on Steel Pier. They had a horse and a rider that would dive off of a platform 40 feet down into a 12-foot pool. They didn't actually dive off the pier, just off of a platform down into a pool. And that was from the 1920s to the 1970s. Just a few years ago, the owners of Steel Pier wanted to try and bring that attraction back. As you can imagine, it was met with some fierce opposition related to animal rights, so that idea was scrapped. And interestingly enough, it's still owned by a small private company that owns this pier out here. It's not owned by one of the big chains like Landry's or one of the casinos here in Atlantic City. So Celtic Lady made a comment on one of our YouTube videos that said, hey, if you get down to Brigantine Beach, you got to go to a place called Max Snacks. For whatever reason, I thought Celtic Lady said Max Shack. So I searched for a place called The Shack, and I did find this particular place called the Crab Shack. So I decided to go in and have something to eat. It was really, really good, but I don't think it was the same place. When I asked up there if it was ever called Max Snacks, they said, no, not that they're aware of. They've been there 15 some odd years, and it was vacant when they got it. But Celtic Lady also said it had been like 30-something years since they were there. So who knows? It could have just changed owners, or it might not be the same place. Let you know how it is. I think I'm going to do a little bit of sea scallops and crab cake. Yeah. I decided to come on out to my aunt's orchard while I'm here in New Jersey. When we were kids, she had this apple orchard, and I can remember going there. Sometimes we would sled down the hills in the apple orchard and go summer picnics or whatever with the family to get together. And my uncle at the time ran the buses for the local school system. So he had the bus barn, and then they sold apple cider and apple juice and produce. My cousin, who was just a few years older than me, that I remember as I was growing up, he now has a farm as well. He has orchards, all kinds of different fruits, and also grows vegetables. And most of that is what they sell at the Hauser Hills Farm Market here. So I'm about to go up here and take a look at it. It's interesting. I just drove by and then just came to a place where I can turn around. I remember it being so much bigger. It's so funny. Like, this is a big house with a lot of land and very developed. But as a kid, I seem to remember it being just, the furthest distance from the barn to the house. And they're right there. Not very far. But it's going to be cool. I'll show you what it looks like as we go by. So this is where the orchard starts, right here. House right up here on the right. It's my aunt's place. And it looks like here is the little store. Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's video and enjoyed kind of taking a little ride with me down to Atlantic City, visiting Lucy the elephant in Margate and riding on the giant Ferris wheel at Atlantic City's Steel Pier and learning a little bit about the history of the diving horses. I look forward to heading back north to Hauser Hill Farms, that farm that my aunt had that I kind of grew up playing at from time to time when we'd go to like family events. I can't wait to see how much it's changed and how much it's stayed the same. But honestly, for the last several weeks, I have been eating terribly with all this sort of, New York cheese style pizza and stuff like that. It's not been good. I need to get back to getting some fresh fruit, fresh veg. I got to start drinking smoothies again for breakfast. So I'm certainly going to start doing some of that. If you guys wouldn't mind, I would appreciate it. Do me a favor, give this video a thumbs up. Go ahead and like it. I'd love to see if we can get to 100 likes on a single video, especially one that's not a boat repair video. So I don't ask for a lot in this thing, but do me a favor, hit a thumbs up on it. I certainly would appreciate it. And then I'll see you guys again right here next Friday. So from Deb and all the girls back aboard Sailing Vessel Dream Chaser, and from me up here in New Jersey, I wish you fair winds and a following sea. Safe sailing, y'all.